Welcome to the Mount Pleasant podcast, featuring discussions and interviews about the people, places, and events that make Mount Pleasant such a special place.
This is the Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm your host, Brian Cleary, and all thanks to the great people at Mount Pleasant Magazine, I get the honor and the privilege of introducing you to Mount Pleasant, the people who make it such a special place to do business, to work, and even to live. We're introducing you to Mount Pleasant's best on the Mount Pleasant podcast. So the town of Mount Pleasant, the beautiful place we live, is one of the most fastest growing areas in our entire nation. And because of that, we will have a new district in the state legislature. It'll be district number 80. And a person who's running for that seat, perhaps looking for your vote, joins us today on Mount Pleasant podcast. I'm Brian Cleary, so proud to be joined by Kathy Landing. Kathy, thanks for taking your time to join us today.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you to all your viewers. I look forward to sharing some thoughts and ideas today.
Hi, I'm Kathy Landing, and I have some exciting news to share. For the first time ever, the town of Mount Pleasant will soon have its own dedicated South Carolina House seat known as District 80. This district will run from Carolina Park, Faison Road, south to Long Point Road and west of Highway 17. So if you live in this area, you will soon have a brand new representative in Columbia. Over the past 4 years, I have truly loved and been honored to serve the residents of Mount Pleasant on town council. During my time on council, I have worked very hard to listen to you and to try to solve some of our toughest problems, such as too much residential growth, infrastructure that wasn't keeping up with the town's needs, and trying to bring jobs and services that were high quality to our side of the bridge in order to shorten car trips. By having a dedicated advocate in Columbia for the town of Mount Pleasant, we can get so much more done and be able to have a real impact statewide. I am so thrilled to announce today my candidacy for SC State House District 80. Over the next several months, I will be out meeting as many residents as possible so I can hear directly from you what your biggest concerns are and what you want to see happen in Columbia. For more information or to join our team, go to kathylanding.com or visit @KathyLandingMTP on social media. Thank you and God bless.
Well, let's start with this. Politics can be a rough and tumble game. It's not something for everything. So you personally, what is it about you that makes you want to be involved in politics and run for this particular office?
Well, until 5 years ago, I had never been involved in politics. I had been a businesswoman, a mom, a military wife. And as my family grew up and was out of the house and we were a true empty nest, my husband and I, who are celebrating 38 years of marriage this Thursday, said, there's something more I'm supposed to do. I'd always been very, very involved in the community on various boards, volunteer at my church in numerous ways, and also really from the time I was in middle school forward, all kinds of service projects and service organizations. And suddenly it just seemed like it wasn't enough. It seemed like there was something more I was supposed to do. And the more we talked about it and thought about it and even prayed about it, the more we realized maybe I should try to turn to public service where I could impact a lot more people with all the experience I had gained. And so that's what made me run for town council in 2017. And I was delighted to be and honored to be elected on my very first time out, especially since we had 11 people vying for 4 slots. Almost made it seem like it was easy, but boy, did I have something to learn. So, but what I saw, and to your point about the negativity and the rough and tumble aspect, what I saw is that too many people approach this in a way as if you almost seem like they're trying to preserve their seat. They're trying to preserve their opportunity to stay in that seat or something, as opposed to doing what both they believe is right and what truly represents their area. And what I saw is that on each and every issue that we had to consider, especially the contentious ones, that it was important that I take in all the information, all the input, and also look at the data and look at what was available and make a sound decision that I could live with and not worry about the emotion or perhaps even the popularity aspect of it. So I definitely took a couple of positions where I was on the small end of it. And what I learned about myself was that I could handle the fact that that meant I was going to come under some heat.
Well, congratulations to you and your husband for 38 years together. If I've got this right, you guys met at Duke University. And so if we're talking about rough and tumble, hard decisions, you're from Duke. Clemson, South Carolina. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, listen, we feel very comfortable and grateful that we don't really have a horse in the game a lot of the time, so to speak, horse in the race when it comes to especially Gamecocks and Clemson. So let's just say, for all my North Carolina friends out there, anybody but Carolina to us means the Tar Heels, not the Gamecocks. So no, I'm just grateful that we have such wonderful schools in South Carolina, and want to make sure that we continue to do all we can. And on that issue, by the way, I really believe it's important that the State House do all it can to promote the ability for young people who aren't necessarily college bound or don't really need to be going into debt to attend technical school and get a great trade, because we are desperately in need of electricians, plumbers, people at all levels, truck drivers. We need our South Carolina Port Authority right here in Mount Pleasant. We desperately need more truck drivers. So there are so many jobs that pay really, really well and are a great career. We need to start glorifying these hardworking, extremely valuable jobs and stop having everybody think, I have to send my child to a four-year school, or I have to go to a four-year school in order to achieve. That is just simply not the case. So I think we can address that in the State House.
Podcast advertising is the new way to reach your best audience. Podcast advertising gives your business a voice of authority. Be heard. Advertise on one of our podcasts. Visit carolinapodcasts.com or call 843-345-7012.
You're listening to the Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Well, let's look back 1 second at your time on the Mount Pleasant Town Council. You served 4 years there. What would you take away from that as one of the things you're most proud of during your time on Town Council?
Well, I had a couple of things that stood out. I think I'd like to state, it's almost going from most recent back, but one of the most recent things I was so proud to be able to do was I was the person on the HR committee who made the motion to raise our staff's pay. It had been all delayed because of COVID, and so Mount Pleasant had actually come under a lot of pressure in the media and elsewhere that we weren't paying our people well enough. But it was only because of the cycle of a typical 4 or 5 year municipal cycle of reviewing pay levels. We did an inflation-based increase every year, but what we did is we finally caught up. We got that pay study finished, and I made the motion last October, and we raised, of course, for all our first responders who were very much worthy, but also all of our staff who had worked so hard, and especially through COVID. And so that was one thing I was really glad. And I also was the person on the fire committee who came up with the idea to have a police and firefighters ball to honor our first responders. And we were able to not only have 100 of our first responders and their spouses come as our guests, but we also raised enough money, all through corporate donations and individual donations, no taxpayer money, to raise the money for 3 of their favorite charities. And so these are just some of the things I did. But I was the economic development chair, and that was a very challenging and meaningful role. Some of the things that we came under, like with the pandemic, where we lost a lot of local businesses just because of the combination of shutdowns and all the different things that had happened, and labor issues and so forth. And so I came up with a plan with our deputy administrator and our corporate liaison. And we actually were able to start having a regular output to Charleston County Economic Development of all of our vacated spaces. And because they knew the size, the location, and they knew that these may very well be impact fee free, we were able to attract a lot more businesses quickly. And we had a record ribbon cutting year last year, partly due to that. So those are just a handful of the things that I'm very proud of. Thank you.
This is the Mount Pleasant Podcast, and I'm Brian Cleary. We're all about Mount Pleasant, as is Mount Pleasant Magazine. And today on Mount Pleasant Podcast, we're talking with Kathy Landing. There's a new district for the state legislature that will be really the Mount Pleasant District, District 80. And Kathy is running for that office in the upcoming primary election, which, of course, is taking place in June. And Kathy, if we go to your website, to kathylanding.com, right there, I see a photo, you and your husband, your 2 children, and also your dog. So let's get into the important stuff. What kind of dog? What's the dog's name, and how long have you had him?
So that's Katie. She's our West Highland Terrier, better known as a Westie. And you may hear her bark at some point here. She's kind of running around the room here. And we do have two full-grown children. Christy and Joseph went to Pinckney, Cario, and Wando High School. So they were the product of Mount Pleasant Public Schools. We're very proud of that. Wonderful schools here. So.
You have a background in finances. And obviously, this is a challenging financial time for lots of people in Mount Pleasant and all across the country. I'd love to ask you to help me out with my 401k and all that, but that's a whole different subject. But where do you think we're at as a state? Where are you comfortable with where the state is financially? Do you think that's a better place than the federal government? Use your financial expertise and talk to us a little bit about the state and finances.
Well, actually, several of the people that are endorsing me, including our own senator of this new district, Larry Grooms, Senator Grooms said, we really need your financial expertise and business acumen up here in Columbia. Nothing against lawyers, but there's a lot of lawyers. And right now we have an opportunity to choose someone who has a very strong economic and financial planning background, which means budgeting. It means how to stretch a dollar out of a penny. It means when you do have, as we did have from the ARPA funds, the relief package from COVID, there's a lot of money sitting there. And how do you allocate that well so that it's really meaningful and truly has a long-lasting impact on our state? There's a lot of money that went up ever since the gas tax started years ago. A lot of money is up there, and yet we haven't seen the improvement of our state roads, such as Highway 41. We need to make sure these projects move forward because our area has grown so quickly and the infrastructure clearly has not kept up. So these are areas where in the State House, I think I can help make sure that those funds are allocated properly. We have a tremendous pension plan and a tremendous pension liability. And it's extremely important that you have people that understand things like actuarial tables and things that sound really boring and nerdy to most people, but are kind of everyday work for me. And I'm excited about being able to have a big impact on that. So I may be very down to earth when you meet me and listen to me, but when it comes time and it's crunch time to make sure that we're using our dollars wisely, I'm very excited to sort of sink my teeth into that and get it done correctly. And another thing I do want people to realize, there's so much going on in our world right now that I'm sorry to say, but it is absolutely because of bad policy. And I'm not even being partisan at all. I'm simply saying there are a lot of decisions that could have been made better. And many of those are financial decisions. So when we make these decisions to send people to the State House, it's not a throwaway. You don't want someone that's just going to go up there and warm a seat and maybe vote the way you want part of the time. You want someone who actually will get things done and make sure that we don't have unintended consequences when we make policy, especially when it comes to our long-term economic outlook, because that affects everybody.
Yeah, it's all about the money. And I think with that, Kathy, I think there are some people, you want to go to Columbia. There are probably people in your district who would say, well, Columbia, it's just a lot of corruption there. It's just a bunch of good old boys spending our money the way they want it. Do you see it that way? And is that something that you believe you can make an impact with?
I wouldn't accuse anybody of anything specific. What I would rather do is dig into the books and really see what's going on. I can tell you that on the town level, there were many times that well-intentioned ideas came forward. Sometimes they were ones that involved tax increases. But as soon as I saw it, I've already signed a pledge. I will not increase taxes. You shift one for another, but not increase. But there were also times where there were ideas on how to do funding for things that we really needed, whether it was flooding in the old village or other things, that the decision might have gone forward if I hadn't been there to do something that wouldn't have been in the best interest of our taxpayers. And I could give specifics, but we don't have time. So similarly, in the State House, I will always make sure that I have input, at least to say my piece. Now, if I'm only one person and nobody wants to listen, that's one thing, but I tend to be fairly persuasive, as I was on council, that when I explain something and I take something complicated and put it in plain English, that we will make better decisions on how we allocate funds and not let it be that it's just somebody doing a favor for somebody, which we all know is not correct and should not happen.
So you live in Mount Pleasant. You've been part of Mount Pleasant Town Council. As you talk to people that are your neighbors and constituents, as you look forward to perhaps going to Columbia, what are they telling you are their priorities in terms of what should happen at the State House?
I'm so glad you asked that, because a lot of people say, I can't believe you want to go to Columbia. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, I want to make sure that we handle things as well as we possibly can. And here is this new district, and the very first time that Mount Pleasant will have a continuous voice always advocating on their behalf. And so we, to clarify, all the seats that we have now are divided up. So we have often gone for long stretches of time where nobody living in Mount Pleasant was up there in Columbia on our behalf. So here we have one that will be that way. And we have someone running who has just finished serving on 9 different committees of council. And I'm very, very aware of what we're facing. I'm very aware of the decisions that have already been made and what the ongoing needs are. So when I've been out talking to people and knocking on doors and listening to my constituents, I can tell you that a lot of people are most concerned about things like Highway 41, like the tremendous buildup of traffic on Long Point Road, which is the southernmost end of the district, especially truck traffic, as well as the labor problems. Most businesses are struggling tremendously, and this is here, but it's all over the country, to hire enough people to do the work that needs to be done. And I have a lot of ideas and things that I believe we can put to work to solve these. So those are probably the biggest things I hear. Although I will say I also hear a lot about transparency in the classroom. Parents are very concerned that things have crept into our school system that they weren't aware of before, and now they are, and they're very upset. So there's a lot of things that we will have to look at, but I can tell you my number one job will be to represent the people of this district, and then to do the best we possibly can for all of Mount Pleasant and for the state.
Kathy Landing is our guest today on Mount Pleasant Podcast. I'm Brian Cleary. And Kathy, if you go to your website, people who know you, you're a proud conservative and South Carolina, a Republican state. But we have so much of this partisan divide in the nation. Do you find that the same in terms of, you were on council? Do you think you're going to run into that in Columbia? And what is it that maybe you as someone in the legislature, if you're elected, is there anything that you can do personally to help with that?
I believe so. There were times where partisan issues came to town council, and they were usually issues that shouldn't even be addressed at town council level. But if someone put it on the agenda, if one of our council members put it, we had to address it regardless. And what I always did is I went back to the data and the facts, and I did my best to present my position in a way that reflected both the people that had reached out to me, but also, and that I had inquired with, but also to reflect my value system as well. It is important that you represent, but you still have to have a strong compass. And I do. And so that is the reason why there were times where, despite the people in the room, I was able to make a case for something a different way, but present it in a way that was factual and persuasive. And we actually had some things where, it looked like someone would be upset, and it ended up not only going in the way that I persuaded towards, but also made the whole room, most of the room, seem very happy. So I say this because you have to stand for something. And if you don't, if you're just going to sway with the loudest voices in the room every night, that means you're forgetting, or in the General Assembly that day, that you're forgetting that there's a whole lot of other people out there. It's important that we represent all of those voices. In terms of the hyperpartisanship, I think it's one of the most devastating things we've seen in the last few years. And I think that the divide and the name calling is just so unnecessary. I've worked for 37 years with people of all different backgrounds, all different religious beliefs, some with no religious beliefs, some with all different political beliefs. And as a business person, I've learned how to be professional and caring and take care of what needs to be done without offending everybody all the time. And I think you can stand your ground if necessary on certain issues without doing that. Of course, in business, I don't talk about certain things. But I think even when you do have to do that in the State House, when I have to face a tough vote, I will be able to do so in a way that will be professional and hopefully show that I'm trying to do the right thing.
Obviously, a lot of the noise in our nation right now is coming out of Washington, D.C. You're running for office, but you're doing so on a state level. Is there a way to separate those two? Because obviously a lot of people's reference points are on national issues. You've expressed how you're concerned and you want to serve the local people. Are you able to separate those in terms of the people who will be criticizing you or questioning you?
Well, whether you're representing South Carolina in the State House or you're representing South Carolina in Congress, you are either way, representing the great people of South Carolina. In this case, we have a state that does tend to be a little more conservative overall. In fact, a lot more conservative than some other states. And so I think the most important thing is right now, the State House is the one way that we can push back against a federal overreach that we've seen. We've seen a lot of things, and certainly in the last 2 years since the pandemic, we've seen a lot of push down from the top, but I can even go back further than that. I have a long line of teachers in my family. My mother, all my sister-in-laws, most of my nieces are teachers, and several of especially my sister-in-laws, both retired shortly after Common Core was pushed down from the federal government. And they said it has totally changed in a not positive way, changed in a negative way what goes on in the classroom. So I think at the state level is where we can push back against these kinds of federal overreach, and I intend to do so wherever necessary.
About a couple other things. I read in your biography that you were a church organist when you were in your teens. Do you still play?
Yes, I do. In fact, I've substituted at my church right there on Coleman Boulevard a number of times, including when we did not have an organist for a while. I was an interim volunteer organist for 6 weeks. I'd like to be doing so now, but because we have some issues now. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing. For me, it's a joy. It's therapy because I love it. The music I play is oftentimes related to church or classical, so that's a complete departure from what we normally see and hear, unless we're in church. So yeah, it's very uplifting. Thank you for asking.
And there's something that people may not realize. For more than 2 decades, you've put time, effort into Operation Smile. Can you explain to people who aren't familiar with Operation Smile what it is, and talk a little bit about why that was something that you really, just jumped in on and wanted to help out with?
Sure. Well, I was pre-med in college, and I made the decision after working at Duke Hospital the summer after my junior year not to pursue either taking the MCAT or trying to apply to medical school for a couple of different reasons. But I never lost my love of helping others and trying to improve people's lives. And along the way, one of my clients invited my husband and I to a fundraiser for Operation Smile. And to be able to see, everybody has seen the before and after pictures somewhere, either on TV or a magazine or somewhere, but to know that that could be accomplished, this surgery that is completely life-changing for these children, could be accomplished in oftentimes as little as 30 to 45 minutes and with as little as $240 of actual cash. Everything else is donated, was just amazing to me. Something that was so results-oriented and so quickly. And so I not only became a volunteer early on and started helping with fundraisers, then I chaired some fundraisers, then I was invited to the board. And then I helped build our board from 3 people to 15 people, and we became the most successful fundraising chapter outside of New York and LA. And this was the Carolinas chapter, headquartered out of Greensboro. And so it's been an extremely meaningful thing to be a part of. I'm thrilled to say that it's an organization that would like to work its way out of existence, in the sense that they'd like to be able to get to a place where we actually help on a preventative level with cleft lip and palate, with better prenatal care and so forth. But right now, it's still the number one birth defect, even here in the United States. 1 in 1,000 children are born with cleft lip or palate. The only difference is here, you don't see people walking around like that because children are treated right after birth.
And your influence on that spilled over to your daughter.
Yes, she actually, Christy helped with events as she was growing up, even when she was very young. And eventually she started a Smiles Club, they call it, at Wando High School. So I don't think it's going now, but it was going for several years after she left and went on to college.
So the June primary is coming up, and you are one of the folks looking to represent the new District 80 and help out the people of Mount Pleasant. Can you give us a close for us here? People need to know, why should they cast a ballot for Kathy Landing in the upcoming District 80 election?
Well, thank you. Yes, less than 5 weeks from today, we will have this election, and we will have the opportunity to choose someone, as I've said, who has not only a very strong background in problem solving, in financial matters, in the economy, in how to avoid unintended consequences that can actually hurt rather than help. Someone who has an empty nest. I have plenty of time to be able to truly devote, and I won't be leaving ball games or ballet performances or anything at home because I'm in Colombia. I have a very, very supportive husband who has plenty of time to support me and even accompany me from time to time. I believe people have the opportunity to have someone who has already dedicated 4 years with 9 committees of council, really knows the issues facing Mount Pleasant extremely well, and can't wait to learn more about what you want to see done. So I look forward to reaching more of you before the election, and I ask for your vote and your prayers and your support for June 14th. Thank you.
And Kathy, if someone wants to reach out to you, if they're looking for information about you, I guess the best place to go would be your website?
Yes, on the website, kathylanding.com, Kathy with a K. And on there, not only can you submit your information if you just want to sign up for our regular emails, but on top of that, you can email me or reach out to me through Facebook. Kathy Landing, Communicating Mount Pleasant and the Low Country is my Facebook page. So look forward to hearing from you.
The election is coming up on June 14th, the primary, and make certain to get out and vote. If you haven't registered, please do so. Your vote is your voice. It's important that you go out and do that. Town of Mount Pleasant now with our own representation, a new district, District 80 in the State House. Kathy Landing, good luck in the upcoming election, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
Hopefully you will do that. It's your duty. It's your responsibility to get out and vote. This great town of Mount Pleasant that we all live, work, do business in, we want to make sure we've got the best of the best, and we're happy to continually bring those to you here through Mount Pleasant Magazine and also on Mount Pleasant Podcast.
Thanks for spending your time with the Mount Pleasant Podcast, your community, your podcast. Listen to past and future episodes at mountpleasantpodcast.com.